Welcome back to the show, Marianne. It's such a pleasure to have you back on Unabashed You.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and so proud of you to have done over 240 episodes. And I remember back in the day. So it's just so cool
Yes. And,
to come on again.
and you were early on, and what I think your number was like 39 or 37 or something.
Something along that
Something
line.
along the lines.
And
Yeah. So that was quite a time ago. And it's just so wonderful to have you back. So let's get to know you a little bit better. What's a current show that you're watching that you're enjoying?
one that I'm watching that I'm really enjoying, it's been out for a little bit, a few years, but it's called The Rookie.
Oh,
And the reason I like it is the premise is there's this 40-year-old man and he has a passion to become a cop. And so he becomes an LA cop as a rookie over 40. He gets teased a lot about it. But then the show begins to weave in how his experience of being an older person,
uh,
for you and I, 40 is not older, but still,
right.
for him in his second half of his career, um, it really brings out how that experience and wisdom can play out in the workplace in certain scenarios and with his peers, even though he's still in a big learning capacity as a rookie.
Right, right. Ooh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to need a new show soon, so I'm going to check that out. Thank you for that. That one of the reasons I like that question is personally, I like to hear some good shows I might be missing. And also I'm as you are a lover of stories, so it's
Mhm.
just like I want to hear a good story. So thank you
Yeah.
for that. Thank you for that. And who was your crush growing up?
My crush growing up was Patrick Swayze. I love Dirty Dancing. He's such a good dancer, those blue eyes, handsome guy. But
Yeah.
I also really appreciate that over the years, I would hear interviews of him and how highly his wife spoke of him
Oh,
and
yeah.
just how nice he was and how he treated her and just their life and just felt like he was the whole package,
I love that.
not just the
Oh,
looks but the whole package.
yes, and really, that's really what you want, right? That's, you want the whole package. You don't just want the good looking guy. What's something that you're most afraid of? And this can be like irrational, or if you want to go deep, we can.
Yeah, I mean there's fear of failure at times and things like that, but the thing that kind of resurrected itself in this last year was I have a fear of big dogs that I don't know if they're not with their owner.
Oh,
And even
yes.
though we're a dog family, and people would probably be surprised to hear that from me because we have a 70-pound Belgian Malinois, which is a military dog. And we just adopted her this last year. And so it resurrected some fears that I had as we were training her and helping her acclimate to our family, and that it just kind of
Right.
was it brought up old feelings because I don't know if you know, but as a child I was mauled by a dog.
No. Oh,
Yeah, they
no.
stopped counting the stitches at 190. So
Oh,
I have a realistic fear, but I had thought I had let go of it over the years. And then this experience has kind of brought that back because it was a bigger dog. And
right.
but I say, and when you don't know them, but still it's somehow brought that in. I mean, now she's fully trained, she's very lovable, she's a big part of our family.
Right.
But it surprised me kind of the fear that came up as a result of the early process in training her.
Right. And I think some of that is very real. I mean, obviously tied to the trauma you had as a child, but then
Mhm.
also realistic, because if you see a dog without their owner, you don't know. Are you a nice, well-trained dog? Are you not? Are you going to be aggressive? Are you going to jump on? I mean, it's such an
Yeah.
unknown. You don't know.
Yeah. And my fear took over. I couldn't move.
Oh gosh, that fight, it's fight, flight, or freeze, I think, right?
Yeah, I
You
think
can
that's
fight,
right.
you can fly, and then I think there's that part of us sometimes that just wants to freeze.
In this scenario, I freeze, though I typically am a flight person.
Oh, Gosh. Well, yeah, that is very understandable. And I'm glad that you've worked through it to the extent that you have. It may always be a little tiny something. I think some of that is natural.
I think so too. I
It
think so too.
is.
And it was a good learning experience to work through it and realize what she needed, our dog, in order to be a good, healthy, well-behaved dog. And that
Right.
took some training on the part of my husband, I, and myself and our daughter. Yeah.
Right. Very good. Yeah, you got to train the people too, right?
Mostly.
Mostly, right. All right. A random fact most people would not know about you.
Oh, God, I was kind of searching on that because I feel like I'm pretty transparent. I will say, so I have two tattoos.
You see, I did not know that. Marianne and I are friends off camera, and I did not know that. Well, now
So
you have to
here's
tell
the
us.
caveat. It's not the way you think they are. They're not
Oh
pretty
my gosh.
flowers. It's not a dolphin on my back. It's not some of the fun things that we see on
All
others.
right. Do tell.
And I have to say, my oncologist is the one who said you can use this as a little known fact at some point.
Okay.
Because when you go through radiation treatment, like I did during my cancer journey, they had to put some markers on and their tattoos. And so they can know where to
Okay.
put the machine to line it up to do the proper work that it needs to do. And so it was
Oh.
kind of like, I kind of tucked that back away when they said that, hey, you can use this someday.
Well, here you go. And here it is. Yes. And how brilliant, really, that they do that. I have one marker, but I think that's before they did tattoos, and that was a little piece of metal. I mean,
Mhm.
it must be very tiny, and this was just
It is
eons
small.
ago, and I did not end up with cancer, but they did put a marker in me anyway. But it sounds like they've gone to something that makes maybe a little more sense.
Yeah, they keep progressing.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful how far they've come in the treatment of various cancers.
Yes, and of course we're so grateful that you made it through and are now on the other side. How many years has it been
Absolutely.
now?
Two.
Two. Well, you know what? That's two.
Two
That's
more. Yeah,
two.
exactly.
That's
Got to
two.
ring the bell. Got to ring
That's
the
right.
bell, and that's the
Yeah.
key.
Yes. All right. What advice would you give to your 10-year-old self?
I um the advice I would give is in a world where you can be anything, be yourself.
Oh gosh,
It's
that's
so unabashed you-ish. But I think it's true. I really like the idea of run your own race with the gifts and talents God's given you.
yes.
Because when we embrace that, which took me a really long time to personally embrace, um, I feel like we're more content, we're happier, we're able to be ourselves. And it's interesting. I had a conversation yesterday, about this whole be yourself and,
Right.
don't let the things that you're not good at hold you down.
Right.
I was talking to a friend of mine, and I shared the example that our daughter, when she was in second and third grade, which is the age of the son the person I was talking to is, it had a little bit of issues with reading and that kind of thing. And very quickly, my husband and I said, that may be something you're not so good at, but you can get a tutor, you can get a mentor, you can have somebody train you on it. It's a learnable thing. It's not a problem.
Right.
And we taught her early on that if you don't know how to do something, let's get you a tutor. That just makes it
Right.
easier. And the tutor, it's their gift and they get to share it with you. And then
Right.
we would quickly share with her as well, but your gift is math and leadership. So you
Right.
can use those good things that you are able to do well with your friends. And you can
Right.
help someone out with their math problem. And so she started to see that not everyone has to have the same gifting or the same talents. So she can be herself by knowing what she's good at, not just focusing on what she's not good at.
Right. And get help with the things you need to get a little bit better at to get through, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, no baby is born knowing much of anything, right? I mean, everything else
Yeah.
is you're like you say, you're gifted or you end up learning about it because you either have to when you're in school or you want to and you get to. I think those are all yeah, it's doable. It's doable.
Yeah. And I'm trying to be reminded of that myself, even now, as I'm trying to venture into new different things, that it's okay to get help. Because I am like the worst at technology, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to hire someone for some of this. And
Yeah.
it's okay to do that because it allows me to stay in my sweet spot in other areas.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. Yes, yes, because we can't be good at everything. It just does not
Mm.
it doesn't make sense. We wouldn't need anybody else if we were
Right.
good at everything. It wouldn't work. All right, now we're going to take our deep dive into we're in our grief and gratitude series. And I feel like for you, there's so many ways you could go with this. As your friend, I'm very curious to see which avenue you've decided to take. Describe for us a time of grief.
Oh, well, like you said, I kind of, when I initially, you said that's what it was about, the episode, I'm like, oh, geez, I don't have anything to talk about on this.
Yeah, you
Then
do.
I realized I really have a lot to talk about. So I'm no stranger to grief because I lost my brother before he was 40, and he left behind a young family, and that was very
Oh my
hard. My
gosh.
father passed, but his was more of old age, but I still missed him. And then I even in my early days had an unwanted divorce, and it crushed me, and I felt like a lot of grief from that not turning out as I had hoped and wished it would.
Yes.
And so grief is something I think we experience along our journey of life in many ways. But the grief that caused me the most anxiety, sorrow, regret, and I'll probably tear up,
That's
is the
fine.
grief that was self-inflicted. I mean, there's grief that can
Ooh,
be put upon you, or that can be a result of loss. But the grief that I found I struggled the most in life with is the grief that I brought upon myself. And let me give you an
wow. Yes.
example of that. Is in my 20s, and really probably even into my early 30s, I made some pretty poor choices. And those choices resulted in me getting an STD,
Okay.
sexually transmitted disease, for those that don't know. And in my
Right.
case, it was herpes. And that led to a great deal of sadness, regret, and shame. And then
Right.
that shame, I felt influenced my relationships. It caused me
Mhm.
to feel unworthy, unlovable, and quite lonely for years because I didn't want to have to tell someone. I didn't want to
Right.
dating. I was mad at myself that I enabled this to happen.
Right.
And so it kept nagging at me and became, a grief that I was struggling with.
Right.
Um, then I got to a kind of a breaking point, the loneliness was taking over. And I just cried out to God because I've been a Christian since the sixth grade.
Yeah.
I've always had my faith. I haven't always been grounded in that faith, but I knew that God existed and that I needed to reach out to Him in order to have something change.
Right.
But I wasn't able on my own to do that. And so I prayed about it, and He brought to mind Psalm 103:10. Psalm
Wow.
103:10. And for those that don't know that psalm, it says, He does not treat us as our sins deserve or repay us according to our iniquities.
Oh, wow.
Like it bears repeating. He does not treat us as our sins deserve, though we and our culture we live in do. And He doesn't repay us. He doesn't feel like there has to be retribution for us.
Right.
And so He showed me through that psalm that He doesn't treat my sin as I deserve, and He doesn't hold it against me, and that Jesus paid the ultimate price on the cross to redeem me from that past.
Right.
And if I accept it, it provides a way to embrace the future, my future based on a relationship with Him. And so I started to realize I needed to let Him define me, not the culture we lived in that held this so against me, or the men I might date that held this against me. Those things that kept perpetuating where I was at.
Right.
And so once I embraced that and turned my life more fully over to Jesus, my veil of shame and guilt was lifted. I mean, I still had the
Right.
consequences. I still had the
Right.
consequences of my choices, but I began to feel like I could be loved, like
Oh
I
my
had worth
gosh.
and the confidence to move forward as myself and not keep that grief and shame, having that keep me in a stuck place.
Right. Right.
So that was huge.
That is huge. And I really understand, and you've really explained it so well, sort of the whole cycle of what you went through, starting out just kind of doing your own thing and having some fun and
You
having
bet.
too much fun and having worldly fun and then then this became kind of like I think you even said it, the breaking point of, getting an STD and then all that now goes with that.
Yeah.
And that sort of, you know, it stopped you in your tracks. And then,
Mhm.
but now, in addition to the physical ramifications, now because you believe in God, you've now taken on like what must he think of me and all these, like you said, very shame-based kind of things, unworthy and lovable. But then that you realize, and I love this, you realize that was not from God.
Yeah.
It's not from him. He would never want you to be in a place of feeling like you're unlovable, you're unworthy. I mean, all of those things. I
Mm-mm.
mean, I feel teary just saying that. That's not who he is. And
Mm-mm. He loves us, and he loves us so deeply that he put his own life on the line to make sure that we knew that,
right,
and
exactly.
that it made a difference.
Right.
If we don't accept it, then it doesn't seem like it makes a difference.
Right. And
So we
that's
have to think.
I feel like for myself, I often go back after I've put something down, I go back and
Mhm.
pick it back up. Let me worry about this a little bit. Let me obsess about this a little bit. Oh, you want that? Oh, okay. Oh, now I'm gonna pick it back up again. Oh my
Oh
God.
yeah, I spent many a year doing that, thinking I'd set it aside, pick it back up, but for some reason, just being able to say this psalm to myself and realize the gravity of what he did on the cross, and really allowing that to seep into my soul allowed me to separate from the hold that had on me.
Right, right. You were able to recognize the truth of it, the
Hmm.
truth
Yes.
of it. It got in there, and
Yes.
that is just so beautiful, so beautiful. So we know how you got through it. You tried to do it yourself, and you realized, I can't do that. And this one verse just really hit you, and that's one thing I really love, about reading verses is sometimes at different points in your life, one, it will just like knock you over the head and you'll just think, well, has that been there all along? I don't know.
Exactly. You see it differently.
Was that there before? I mean, it's almost that kind of a feeling. Now, are you able, what would you say is the good that came from that? Because I love Romans 8:28. That's my, for we know that God causes all things to work for good to those who believe him and those who are called according to his purpose. What's can you trace the goodness that came from that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because in the moment I didn't feel good about it for
No.
sure. But what came out of that, or what I learned, was that we all make mistakes. We all have things that we aren't proud of or have not done well, or, falls in the quote sin category. But I found that if I was willing to tell my story of struggle and redemption, that it could help others to find hope and freedom. And so as I processed this out a bit over the ensuing years, and had opportunity to encounter different individuals who maybe were struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Some might say they were struggling with the same thing if I knew them intimately. I mean,
Right,
very few
right.
people will talk about this topic. So
Yes.
it's one that you don't come across too much. But a quote that really has helped me is I was scrolling on Instagram and I saw this quote by Brian Solis. Don't even really know him, but this quote was there. And it said, "One day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you're going through now, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide."
Uh,
I just resonated with that. And I thought, I need to be able to
oh
think
my
about my
gosh.
story and share it in a way that can help someone. And let me give you an example. A situation that happened a few years ago here.
Yeah.
As you know, my daughter's older now. But her first year in college, because my daughter knows this about me,
Right.
she encountered an acquaintance at college that actually had just heard she had an
Oh,
STD.
yes.
And she was on the cliff of despair. And she was like, how can I live with this? And what guy's ever going to want to date me? And all the things that I definitely processed. And my daughter immediately called me because she asked the girl, "Hey, is it okay if I, put you in contact with my mom?" And she called me and said, "Will you talk to this girl and tell her your story? Because she thinks her life is over." And
Oh,
I talked to her for a while that day and really had a
oh,
conversation that I think was healthy. It wasn't like me being a parent trying to dictate what she should do. It was more,
right, right,
I'm a person who survived this, and here's what you need to think about going forward.
right.
And I realized that on that day, I became part of her survival guide, and
Uh,
God made himself known to her through my story. And
right.
she might not have encountered that from in the way that I had it from someone else, because I had the
Yes.
maturity to use it as a guide for her to consider what she's doing going forward and what she needs to do to respond to this. And it was quite an amazing thing. I mean, she was just an acquaintance, so there's not this lasting relationship that we all have, but it was just a time where God used it in a way I think that made a difference.
Oh, absolutely. He's sure.
And so to me, that's a good thing. One thing I will share with you and would want your listeners to know is I've learned if we don't think about these things in advance, it doesn't usually come out very good. So, in other words, if I would have just got on the phone and poured out all my past history, my details, my feelings, my drama, that probably would not have helped her. But the
Right.
fact that I had some time, actually years, to reflect on how might I use this grief, pain, regret in a way that could serve someone else, uh, enabled me to get it down to 5 minutes.
Oh my
Or,
gosh.
or I don't know how much I'd spent sharing with you on the beginning of this topic, but I found if I could get it down to 5 minutes, I could have more opportunity to, one, share it effectively, and secondly, be able to be present and listening to them.
Right.
Because if it's all about me and my story, then it's no longer about them and why they need to even hear it. And
Gosh.
so I feel like there needs to be that. And so,
Well,
as you know, that's really what I crafted my book around that I just now finished.
and I'm so glad you brought that up because if you didn't bring it up, I certainly was going to bring it up. And that is that Marianne, throughout her career of being a presentation coach, you're coaching other people give their presentations. Am I wording that well?
Yes, for industry, for 20
For
years in
industry, yes,
industry,
and the
I would
industry,
help executives with their presentations and how to craft their story from a
right?
business perspective.
Right. And don't you find that fascinating that that was your career? And now she's done this beautiful pivot and she's turned all of that experience and, married it to her faith. And now you've taken all of that and you've crafted a book. I'm going to say crafted. I mean, yes, you wrote it. Of course, you wrote it, but it's more than just writing. I think when you craft something, there's art involved. It's infused with inspiration and all those good things that are sprinkled in. So you were able to put all that together, and your book is called, tell me the name of your book.
Your Story for God's Glory, a Christian's Guide to Sharing Your Faith with Confidence, Clarity, and Impact.
Right. And
And
yes, beautiful. And I did not have you on so that we could quote unquote pitch the book, but but what a wonderful, I've got the but in there again. What a wonderful opportunity for us to have a conversation about this, because look how applicable this is. You were able to, because of your experience and your faith, those married together, craft this story that now helps other people.
yeah, God's put on my heart to not only share my own story and help him be known and loved more as a result of it, but to help other people tell their stories. And so the book's been in progress for 5 years, and the gift that the Lord really provided me with is there. It represents 30 different types of people. When I say types, I mean, from a 13-year-old to a grandpa, from a gangster to an executive. I mean, I
Right.
just have stories of different types of people that want to share their story in a more concise and compelling way so that they can help others. And so that's
Yes.
really what it's about, is how do we help take that, what could be our big, complex, messy story of life, and distill it down to something that can be shared pretty quickly, but with meaning and purpose.
Yes, yes. And that's exactly, you talked about the different variety of people that you have, and some of them are maybe in a more professional capacity, but that's not really the point. The point is, like you say, to get down, the part of their story that could be helpful to somebody else. And interwoven within that, the faith of how God worked in their life, in their story.
Yeah, yeah, because actually there's 10 primary stories and only two of them are people that would be considered executive types. The others are just your everyday person like ourselves.
Right. And they wanted to be able to do this. I remember the grandpa wanted to be able to do it so that he could share with his grandkids. Isn't that
Right.
correct?
That is
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
Yes. And then the guy who had been in prison wanted to be able to do it for those that came up after him, that they might choose better. I mean, not just
Yeah, he was trying to
fellow person.
he was trying to help teenagers who were being recruited into gangs to not go into the gangs.
Right. Oh my gosh. I mean, the impact is, it's so vast and mind-boggling, and such a beautiful way to bring story out in the most helpful way. And we are so drawn to story,
Mhm.
right?
We do. We are, and as the disciples asked Jesus, why do you tell stories? And he says, well, because if there's no if people are not receptive, they will not be able to move forward. And so a story helps people become more receptive to new perspectives and ideas and things that maybe they aren't familiar with.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh,
And I
so
just,
true.
one of the foundational pieces of the book is that God first loved us, and our willingness to share what he has done through us in our stories with others is a gift back to him, which is really
Ah,
gratitude in action, if you think.
yes. Yes. Yeah. And I was just going to ask you, what advice would you give for somebody to cultivate gratitude? And it sounds like, what would you say?
Like I was saying, just being willing to take what you just journeyed through and be able to selectively share it with those that God puts on your path that could benefit from that. And it might be one person in your lifetime. It might be five. It might be, most of us are talking to individuals, not
Right.
to groups.
Yes.
But I think just that willingness to say, this sorrow, pain, regret, whatever it is that the person experienced from grief can be turned into something more positive, which then leads to our feeling like we're doing something with purpose, which I feel like is a form of gratitude. I'm
Yes.
being grateful for what you've put in my hand, and I'm going to use it with an open hand to give someone else.
Oh my gosh, so beautiful.
And
Gosh.
you know,
Oh my
I think everyone has a story that matters to someone,
Yes.
that
Yes. Say
someone
that
can hear
again.
from your voice. I like to think about it like the gang leader talking to those youth that are being recruited into gangs. If I walked in, this mommy person and talked to them, they'd be like, so what? But, this, 20-year veteran gang leader walking in and everyone quiets down because they know who he is, that's a whole different story. They're going to hear his story differently than they would if they heard it from me. And I think that's true of all of us, us talking to family members or talking to those in our community.
Absolutely. Here, here. I feel so, after having this conversation, I feel so elevated and so fulfilled
Oh, good.
and
Thank
so
you.
joyous and just all those really good things that are fun to feel. And I'm not going to lie, this morning was kind of rough. I don't know why exactly. It started out with some technical difficulties, and that just wasn't getting resolved. And it led me down this rabbit hole of feeling just and discouraged. And now I get on the call with you, and I could fly. I love it. Okay,
Yay.
well, one, is there anything else you didn't get to say that you wanted to say?
I just want to reiterate, your story matters. Our
Okay,
story matters, and it can make a difference for someone in a positive way. And we should embrace that, or we have the opportunity to embrace it. Shouldn't be any shoulds, but we have an opportunity to embrace that and use it for good.
right. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, and the shoulds. Yeah, I'm trying to be careful with the shoulds, but sometimes
They
sometimes
sneak
they
in.
work, sometimes they do. And where can everyone find you?
At Marianne at kingdompresenters.com. So presenters with an S.com, kingdompresenters.com, or Amazon. Look up the book, Your Story for God's Glory by Ann Mariani.
Right. Okay, and I'll have that in the show notes. And Marianne, those are two words, Mary and Ann without an E.
A-N-N, no E.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there you go. Very good. This has been delightful. That's been my
Oh,
word lately. Yeah,
what a fun word.
it is a fun word because wouldn't it mean of the light? I mean, if it's got the word light in it, D, I mean, of the light.
Mhm.
No, I'll have to look up the
Okay,
word
you're
again.
stretching it too far now, Rechelle.
I do like words. I do like words.
You do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Marianne. What a pleasure this has been. An absolute honor to have one of my friends on and to be able to talk about all this goodness and to encourage others that, yeah, you do have a story and it does matter. It absolutely does. Thank you,
Thank
Marianne.
you. My pleasure.